When architect Lena Hart showed up at single father Ethan Cole's door at midnight with everything she owned crammed into 2 duffel bags, he had exactly 3 seconds to decide whether to trust a stranger or leave her on the street. What he didn't know was that letting her into his garage loft would drag him into a legal war that could cost them both everything. But Ethan Cole wasn't the kind of man who walked away from a fight, especially when someone needed him. This is their story, a collision of desperation and quiet strength that would prove some connections are forged in crisis and built to last. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story reaches. And if you stay until the end, hit that like button. Trust me, you'll want to see how this one plays out. The overhead fluorescent lights in Ethan Cole's auto shop buzzed with that particular frequency that meant one of the ballasts was dying. He made a mental note to replace it. Later, when he wasn't elbow deep in the transmission of a '98 Honda Civic that had seen better decades. The clock on the wall read 9:47 p.m., which meant he'd been at this for 13 hours straight. His phone vibrated against the metal workbench. He ignored it, probably his mother calling to remind him that Riley had a field trip tomorrow and needed the permission slip signed. Already done. Already in the backpack. He'd learned years ago that staying ahead of the small things was the only way to keep the big things from falling apart. The shop was quiet except for the hiss of the air compressor and the distant sound of traffic on Route 9. This was Ethan's favorite time, after the last customer left, after his daughter was asleep at his mother's house, when it was just him and the honest work of fixing things that were broken. Cars didn't lie. They didn't leave. They just needed patience and the right tools. He wiped his hands on a red shop rag and straightened, feeling the familiar ache in his lower back. 32 years old, and his body already kept a running tab of every hour spent bent over an engine block. He walked to the small office attached to the main bay, grabbed a bottle of water from the mini fridge, and checked his phone. 3 missed calls from his mother. Ethan frowned. That wasn't like her. 1 call was a reminder. 2 was emphasis. 3 meant something was wrong. He hit redial. Ethan, thank goodness. His mother's voice came through tight with concern. Are you still at the shop? Where else would I be? Someone's coming to see you. A young woman. I gave her your address. Ethan set down the water bottle. Mom, what are you talking about? She came to the church earlier, the community outreach program. She was desperate, Ethan. Completely desperate. Her landlord locked her out of her apartment, changed the locks while she was at work. She has nowhere to go. So you sent a stranger to my shop at 10 o'clock at night? She's not a stranger. Her name is Lena Hart. She's an architect, young, professional, just trying to get her life started. She showed me the lease agreement. What that landlord did is illegal, but she doesn't have money for a hotel, and she doesn't know anyone in town. Ethan pinched the bridge of his nose. Mom, I told her about the loft above your garage. You've been saying you need to rent it out anyway. Just for one night, Ethan. Just until she figures out what to do. You told a woman I've never met that she could stay in my garage? I told her my son is a good man who knows what it's like when life backs you into a corner. The line went quiet. That was a low blow, and his mother knew it. 4 years ago, Ethan had been the one scrambling to figure out how to raise a newborn daughter after Riley's mother walked out without looking back. His mother had been there, steady and certain, asking no questions and demanding no explanations. She'd simply shown up with casseroles and clean laundry and the kind of help that didn't require gratitude, just acceptance. Fine, Ethan said finally. One night. You're a good man. I'm a sucker. Same thing. He hung up and looked around the shop. The loft above the garage wasn't much, just a converted storage space he'd finished last summer with the vague idea of renting it out for extra income. It had a bathroom, a kitchenette, and enough room for a bed and a table. Clean but basic. He'd never actually advertised it, never quite gotten around to figuring out the rental agreement paperwork. Ethan climbed the exterior stairs and unlocked the door. The space smelled like fresh paint and sawdust. He'd installed the trim himself, built the kitchenette cabinets from scratch. It was good work, solid, the kind of thing that would last. He went back down to the shop and was washing the transmission fluid off his hands when headlights swept across the bay door. A small sedan pulled into the lot, something foreign, maybe a Mazda, and parked near the entrance. The engine cut off, and for a long moment, nothing happened. Ethan dried his hands and walked to the bay door, hitting the button to raise it halfway. The cool October air rushed in, carrying the smell of rain that hadn't fallen yet. The car door opened, and a woman stepped out. She was younger than he'd expected, mid-20s maybe, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail that had seen better days. She wore jeans and a blazer that looked expensive but rumpled, like she'd been wearing it for too many hours. 2 large duffel bags hung from her shoulders, stuffed to capacity. She stopped a few feet from the bay door, her expression caught between exhaustion and wariness. "Ethan Cole?" Her voice was steady, but he could hear the edge underneath, the control it was taking to keep it that way. "That's me. I'm Lena Hart. Your mother said—" She stopped, seeming to recalibrate. "I'm sorry to show up like this. If this is an imposition, I can find somewhere else. I just need a few hours to figure things out." Ethan studied her. She had the look of someone who'd been running on adrenaline for too long, the kind of tired that went bone deep. But she was holding herself together, shoulders back, chin up, pride even now. "Come on," he said, gesturing to the stairs. "Loft's up there." She hesitated. "I can pay rent. I just need a day or two to access my accounts. We'll figure that out later. Right now, you look like you need sleep more than you need a lease agreement." Something in her posture softened, just slightly. "Thank you." He led her up the stairs and unlocked the door, flipping on the lights. The loft illuminated in warm LED glow, clean floors, white walls, a queen bed with basic linens, a small table, and 2 chairs by the window. Lena stepped inside and set down her bags. She turned in a slow circle, taking it in. "This is more than I expected. Bathroom's through there. Kitchenette has a hot plate and a microwave. Water heater takes a minute to warm up." He pulled a key off his ring and set it on the counter. "Lock the door. I'll be in the shop until around 11 if you need anything." "I don't know how to thank you." "Don't worry about it." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Just so you know, my daughter might be around tomorrow afternoon. Riley. She's 4. Sometimes she plays in the shop after preschool. I'll stay out of the way." "Wasn't asking you to." He nodded once and left, pulling the door shut behind him. Back in the shop, Ethan returned to the Civic. But his mind wasn't on the transmission anymore. He kept thinking about the look in Lena Hart's eyes, that mix of desperation and determination, like someone who'd been knocked down but wasn't planning to stay there. He knew that look. He'd seen it in the mirror 4 years ago. The next morning, Ethan arrived at the shop at 6:30, coffee in hand and Riley's breakfast packed in a small cooler. His daughter would be dropped off at preschool by his mother at 8, which gave him 90 minutes to finish the Civic and move on to the Silverado that needed new brake pads. The loft was quiet. No lights on, no movement. Ethan started the coffee maker in his office and got to work. At 7:15, he heard footsteps on the exterior stairs. The loft door opened and closed. A few minutes later, Lena appeared in the shop doorway, dressed in dark slacks and a white button-down, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. She carried a leather portfolio under one arm. "Morning," Ethan said, not looking up from the brake assembly he was inspecting. "Good morning. I wanted to catch you before you got too busy." She approached the workbench, her heels clicking on the concrete. "I need to ask you something." "Shoot. Would you consider renting the loft on a short-term basis? I know this was supposed to be one night, but I need time to sort out the situation with my landlord. I can pay market rate. I just need somewhere stable while I figure this out." Ethan set down his tools and looked at her properly. In the morning light, she looked more put together, more professional. But he could see the tension in her jaw, the way her fingers gripped the portfolio just a little too tight. "How short-term are we talking?" "A month, maybe less. I'm an architect. I work for Brennan Design Group downtown. I can provide references, proof of employment, whatever you need." "You got kicked out of your place because—" Her expression hardened. "My landlord claimed I violated the lease by running a business out of the apartment. I'm trying to start my own firm, just small residential projects on the side. I was working on renderings at home, which apparently counts as commercial use. He demanded an extra $1,500 a month or eviction." "That's not legal." "I know, but by the time I got home from work yesterday, he'd changed the locks. All my belongings are in that apartment, furniture, files, equipment. He says I can get them back once I pay 3 months' rent plus late fees. She paused. I don't have that kind of money sitting around. Ethan wiped his hands on a rag. You talked to a lawyer? I have a consultation scheduled for Monday. But in the meantime, I need somewhere to work, somewhere to sleep, and access to my files so I can keep my job and my clients. He considered this. The smart thing would be to say no. Too complicated, too much potential drama. He had a daughter to think about, a business to run. Getting involved in someone else's legal mess was asking for trouble. But then he thought about what his mother had said. Just until she figures out what to do. Sometimes people needed time more than they needed solutions. $500 a month, he said. Utilities included. Month to month. You can work up here if you need to. There's decent Wi-Fi. But I need first month's rent up front. Lena's eyes widened. 500? That's... The market rate for a place like this is at least 1,200. You need a place to work or not? She stared at him for a long moment, and he could see her trying to figure out the catch. There wasn't one. He just didn't see the point in squeezing someone who was already against the wall. Yes, she said finally. Yes, I need it. Thank you. I'll draw up something simple. You can move in officially this weekend. I'm already moved in. Then I guess you're ahead of schedule. He turned back to his work. Coffee's in the office if you want some. Lena didn't move. Why are you doing this? Ethan didn't look up. Doing what? Helping me? You don't know me. My mom vouched for you. That's enough. Your mother met me for 20 minutes. She's a good judge of character. He grabbed a wrench. Besides, the loft was just sitting empty. Might as well get some use out of it. Lena was quiet for a moment. Then, I won't let you down. Didn't ask you to promise anything. Just pay rent on time and don't set anything on fire. That got a small smile out of her. Deal. She left to get ready for work, and Ethan went back to the Silverado. But as he bled the brake lines, he found himself wondering what he'd just gotten himself into. By midweek, a routine had formed. Lena left for her job at Brennan Design Group every morning at 7:30 and returned around 6. In the evenings, she worked in the loft. Ethan could see the glow of her computer screen through the window, hear the occasional sound of her on phone calls with clients or contractors. She was professional, quiet, and kept to herself. Riley, of course, had other plans. On Wednesday afternoon, Ethan's daughter burst into the shop after preschool, ponytail bouncing, backpack nearly as big as she was. Daddy, there's a lady upstairs. Ethan looked up from the oil change he was finishing. I know, sweetheart. That's Lena. She's renting the loft. Can I meet her? She's working. But I want to say hi. Before Ethan could stop her, Riley was already halfway up the exterior stairs, her little legs pumping with determination. He sighed and followed. Riley knocked on the loft door with both fists. Hello, I'm Riley. The door opened. Lena stood there, clearly surprised, her laptop open on the table behind her. Oh, hi. I'm 4, Riley announced. Do you live here now? I do, just for a little while. My daddy said you're an architect. What's that? Lena glanced at Ethan, who had reached the landing. Sorry, he said. She doesn't really do boundaries yet. It's fine. Lena crouched down to Riley's level. An architect is someone who designs buildings. I draw pictures of houses and buildings before they get built, so the construction workers know what to make. Riley's eyes went wide. You draw houses? I do. Can I see? Lena hesitated, then stepped back and gestured inside. Sure. Just for a minute. Riley darted in, and Ethan followed more slowly. The loft had transformed in just a few days. Lena had set up a drafting table by the window, her laptop connected to a large monitor. Architectural plans were tacked to the wall, precise and detailed. A small shelf held thick reference books and sample materials. Lena pulled up a rendering on her screen, a modern house with clean lines and floor-to-ceiling windows. Riley stared at it, mesmerized. It looks like a drawing, Riley said. It is, but it's a special kind of drawing that shows exactly how big everything should be and where all the walls go. That's so cool. Riley looked up at her father. Daddy, Lena makes houses. I heard. Lena saved her work and stood. I actually need to get back to this. I have a deadline tomorrow. Of course. Ethan put a hand on Riley's shoulder. Come on, Riles, let's get you a snack. As they headed back down the stairs, Riley turned to him with a serious expression. I like her, Daddy. That's good. Is she going to stay forever? No, sweetheart. Just for a little while. Why not forever? Because she has her own life. She's just staying here until she finds her own place. Riley considered this. But what if she likes it here? Ethan didn't have an answer for that. That evening, after Riley had gone to bed at his mother's house, Ethan was closing up the shop when he heard footsteps on the stairs. Lena appeared, holding a manila folder. Got a minute? She asked. Sure. She set the folder on the workbench and opened it. Inside was her lease agreement, along with a stack of other documents, emails, photos, receipts. I wanted your opinion on something, she said. You mentioned that what my landlord did wasn't legal. I've been documenting everything, and I think there's enough here to file a complaint, but I don't know if it's worth the fight. Ethan pulled the folder closer and started reading. The lease was standard, nothing unusual. But the emails told a different story. The landlord had sent increasingly hostile messages demanding payment for commercial use violations and unauthorized modifications, none of which were specified in the lease. What modifications? Ethan asked. I hung some shelves. With permission. I have the text message approving it. He kept reading. The more he saw, the clearer the pattern became. This wasn't about lease violations. This was about a landlord squeezing a tenant for extra money, using vague threats and illegal tactics to force compliance. You need to file a complaint with the housing authority, Ethan said, and you need to get your stuff out of that apartment before he tries to claim abandonment. I can't get in without keys. Then you force the issue. File the complaint, send a certified letter demanding access to retrieve your belongings, and document everything. If he refuses, you get the police involved. Lena crossed her arms. That's going to escalate things. He already escalated things when he changed your locks. She was quiet for a moment, looking at the documents spread across the workbench. I don't like conflict. Neither do I. But sometimes you don't get a choice. Is that what you tell Riley? That sometimes you have to fight? Ethan met her gaze. I tell Riley that sometimes standing up for yourself is the only option that doesn't leave you flat on your back. Lena nodded slowly. Okay, I'll file the complaint. Good. And if you need help getting your stuff out of that apartment, let me know. I've got a truck. You do that? I've got a truck and a Saturday afternoon. Might as well use both. For the first time since she'd arrived, Lena smiled. A real smile. Not the polite professional mask she wore most of the time. Thank you, Ethan. Don't mention it. She gathered up the documents and headed back to the loft. Ethan watched her go, then turned off the shop lights and locked up for the night. He had a feeling things were about to get complicated. By Friday, Lena had filed her complaint with the housing authority and sent the certified letter demanding access to her apartment. The landlord's response came Saturday morning. A curt email stating that she could retrieve her belongings the following weekend, provided she paid a storage fee of $200. Lena showed Ethan the email while he was working on a Jeep Wrangler that needed a new clutch. Storage fee, she said, her voice tight with anger. He locks me out of my own apartment and then charges me to get my things back. Ethan read the email. Don't pay it. But if I don't? He's bluffing. The housing authority complaint is already on file. If he tries to withhold your property, he's adding theft to the list of violations. Ethan wiped his hands and pulled out his phone. Send him a reply. Tell him you'll be there tomorrow at noon to collect your belongings, and if he's not available, you'll be accompanied by a police officer to ensure legal access. Lena stared at him. You think that'll work? I think he's been getting away with this because people don't push back. Time to push back. She took a breath, then nodded. Okay. Tomorrow at noon. I'll drive. The next day, Ethan pulled his truck up to the apartment building on the north side of town. It was a converted Victorian, divided into 4 units, with peeling paint and a sagging front porch. Lena sat in the passenger seat, staring at the building with an expression Ethan couldn't quite read. You ready? He asked. No, but let's do it anyway. They climbed out, and Lena led the way to the side entrance. A man was waiting there. Mid-50s, stocky, with a comb-over and a permanent scowl. The landlord. You're late, he said by way of greeting. We're 5 minutes early, Lena replied evenly. The landlord's eyes shifted to Ethan. Who's this? A friend. You didn't say you were bringing anyone. I didn't realize I needed permission to have help moving my belongings. The landlord unlocked the door with exaggerated slowness and stepped aside. You've got 1 hour, and I'm not responsible for anything that's damaged. Lena walked past him without responding. Ethan followed. The apartment was small, just a studio with a kitchenette and a bathroom. But it was clear Lena had made it a home. There were bookshelves lined with design manuals. A desk with a high-end monitor and drawing tablet framed prints on the walls. Everything was neatly organized, carefully chosen, and all of it needed to be packed up and moved out in the next hour. They worked quickly and quietly. Ethan hauled boxes while Lena wrapped her equipment and organized her files. The landlord hovered in the doorway, watching with arms crossed, making occasional comments about damage deposits and cleaning fees. Ethan ignored him. He'd dealt with guys like this before. Men who used their authority to intimidate people, who mistook fear for respect. The key was not to engage. By the time they loaded the last box into the truck, 45 minutes had passed. Lena did a final walkthrough of the apartment, taking photos of every room with her phone. The landlord stepped forward. I'll need payment for the storage fees before you leave. No, Lena said simply. Excuse me? You have no legal right to charge storage fees for property you illegally withheld. My complaint with the housing authority is already filed. If you'd like to dispute it, I suggest you contact them directly. The landlord's face reddened. You think you're smart bringing your boyfriend here to intimidate me? I'm not her boyfriend, Ethan said quietly. I'm just here to help her move. I know your type. Guys who think they can muscle their way into situations, and I know your type, Ethan interrupted, his voice still calm but carrying an edge now. Men who prey on people who don't know their rights, but she knows her rights, and so do I. The landlord took a step back. Get out of my building. Already leaving, Ethan gestured to Lena. Let's go. They climbed into the truck. Ethan started the engine and pulled away from the curb. Neither of them spoke for several blocks. Finally, Lena let out a long breath. That was unpleasant? Necessary. She looked at him. Thank you for being there. You did all the hard work. I just carried boxes. You know that's not true. Ethan kept his eyes on the road. Guy like that needs to know you're not alone. That's all. Is that what you think? That I need someone to protect me? No. He glanced at her. I think you need someone to have your back while you protect yourself. There's a difference. Lena was quiet for a moment. Then, I'm starting to understand why your mother speaks so highly of you. She's biased. Maybe, but she's also right. They drove back to the shop and spent the rest of the afternoon unloading boxes into the loft. By evening, Lena's temporary home was starting to look more permanent. Her books on the shelves, her drafting table set up by the window, her life slowly reassembling itself in this small space above a garage. Riley came by after dinner, insisting on helping Lena arrange her desk supplies. Ethan watched from the doorway as his daughter carefully placed pencils in a cup and asked 1,000 questions about what each tool was for. This is a scale ruler, Lena explained patiently. It helps me make sure everything is the right size when I draw. Can I try? Sure. Here. This is how you use it. Riley's face screwed up in concentration as she attempted to measure the edge of a piece of paper. Lena guided her hand gently, showing her where to line up the markings. Ethan felt something shift in his chest, a warmth he hadn't expected. This woman, this near stranger, was making his daughter smile in a way that felt easy and natural. There was no performance to it, no forced patience, just genuine connection. Daddy, look! Riley held up the ruler. I measured it. Good job, sweetheart. Lena stood and stretched. I think that's enough work for tonight. You've been an excellent assistant, Riley. Riley beamed. Can I help again tomorrow? We'll see, Ethan said. It's bedtime soon. But I'm not tired. You will be in about 10 minutes. Riley pouted but didn't argue. She hugged Lena around the waist, quick and spontaneous, and then ran down the stairs to wait by the truck. Lena looked surprised. She's sweet. She's a handful, but yeah, she's pretty great. She's lucky to have you, Ethan shrugged. I'm just doing what needs doing. Most people don't, though. Do what needs doing. Lena met his eyes. You're a good father, Ethan, and a good person. I don't think I've said that clearly enough. He didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded and headed for the door. Lock up when you're settled, and if you need anything, I know, thank you. Ethan drove Riley to his mother's house, where she'd spend the night so he could get an early start on Monday's workload. As he tucked his daughter into the guest bed, she looked up at him with sleepy eyes. Daddy? Yeah, baby? I hope Lena stays for a long time. She's only here temporarily, remember? But what if she doesn't want to leave? Ethan smoothed her hair back. Then that'll be her choice, but we can't expect people to stay just because we want them to. Riley's eyes drifted closed. But you want her to stay too, I can tell. He didn't answer that. He just kissed his daughter's forehead and turned out the light. But as he drove back to the shop, Riley's words stayed with him. You want her to stay too. And the problem was, she wasn't wrong. The following Monday morning brought rain, the kind that started as mist and gradually worked its way into a steady drizzle that made everything look gray and uncertain. Ethan was replacing spark plugs on a Ford F-150 when his phone rang. The number wasn't saved, but the area code was local. Cole's Auto, he answered, wedging the phone between his shoulder and ear. Mr. Cole? This is Patricia Brennan from Brennan Design Group. I'm calling about Lena Hart. Ethan straightened, setting down his socket wrench. Is she all right? She's fine. I'm actually calling because she listed you as a reference for her housing situation. I wanted to verify that she's residing at your property. She's renting the loft above my shop, yeah. Is there a problem? There was a pause. Not exactly. I'm calling because Lena's applying for a business loan to start her own architectural firm. The bank needs verification of stable housing as part of the application process. Ethan processed this. Lena hadn't mentioned anything about starting her own firm, at least not beyond the side projects she'd told him about that first night. She's a good tenant, pays on time, keeps the place clean. I've got no complaints. That's excellent to hear. Would you be willing to provide a written statement to that effect? Sure. What do you need? Just a simple letter confirming her tenancy, move-in date, and that she's in good standing. You can email it to me directly. I'll have it to you by end of day. Thank you, Mr. Cole. And if I may say, it's good to know Lena has people looking out for her. She's one of the most talented architects I've worked with, but she's had a rough time lately. After hanging up, Ethan found himself thinking about that conversation more than he probably should have. Lena was applying for a business loan. That meant she wasn't just planning side projects. She was planning to leave Brennan Design Group entirely and strike out on her own. That took guts, and capital, and a willingness to risk everything on yourself. He spent his lunch break drafting the letter, keeping it professional but thorough. When he finished, he walked up to the loft to let Lena know he'd sent it. She opened the door in jeans and a sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. It was the first time he'd seen her dressed casually during the day. Day off? He asked. Working from home. I've got renderings due Wednesday and the office is too loud to concentrate. She noticed his expression. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I just got a call from your boss about the reference letter. Lena's face went carefully neutral. I should have asked you first. I'm sorry. I didn't think she'd call directly. It's fine. I sent the letter. He leaned against the doorframe. You starting your own firm? She hesitated, then nodded. Trying to. The loan application is a long shot, but I have to try. Working for Brennan is great, but I'll never get to design the projects I actually care about if I stay there forever. What kind of projects do you care about? Lena walked back to her drafting table and gestured to the plans tacked on the wall. Affordable housing, sustainable design, buildings that serve communities instead of just looking impressive in architecture magazines. She picked up a pencil, turning it over in her fingers. Brennan does high-end residential and commercial work, million-dollar homes, corporate offices. It's good money, but it's not why I became an architect. Ethan studied the drawings on her wall. Even to his untrained eye, he could see the difference between these and the typical blueprints he'd seen. These had a warmth to them, a human scale that felt intentional. How much do you need for the loan? He asked. $50,000. Startup capital for the first year, office space, software licenses, insurance, marketing. I've got about 15 saved. The bank wants to see another 10 before they'll approve the rest. That's a big gap. I know. She set down the pencil. But I've been doing side projects for 2 years, building a client base. I've got 3 people ready to hire me the day I open my doors. It's viable. I just need the bank to believe it. And if they don't? Then I keep working for Brennan and trying again next year. She met his eyes. But I'm tired of waiting for permission to do what I'm already capable of doing. Ethan understood that feeling better than she probably realized. He'd opened his shop 5 years ago with nothing but a toolbox and a lease agreement he could barely afford. Every bank he'd approached had turned him down. Too young, too little credit history, too much risk. He'd ended up borrowing from his mother, paying her back in installments over 3 years. You'll get there, he said, one way or another. Is that mechanic wisdom? That's just life. Things take longer than you want, but if you keep showing up, eventually the pieces fall into place. Lena smiled slightly. Is that what happened with your shop? More or less, except the pieces fell into place right around the time Riley's mom decided she didn't want to be a parent anymore. He hadn't meant to say that. It just came out. Lena's expression shifted. I didn't know. Not many people do. It's not something I talk about. You don't have to explain. She left when Riley was 6 weeks old, Ethan continued, surprising himself. Just walked out one morning and never came back. No note, no phone call. I came home from work and found Riley crying in her crib alone. Sarah had packed a bag and left her keys on the counter. Lena didn't say anything, but her eyes held steady on his, listening without judgment, without pity. I spent the first year thinking she'd come back, Ethan said. That she'd realize she made a mistake and show up apologizing. But she didn't. Eventually I accepted that Riley was mine to raise and nobody was coming to help. So I figured it out. Day by day, one problem at a time. That must have been terrifying. It was. But you do what needs doing. He straightened, suddenly self-conscious about how much he'd revealed. Anyway, point is, you'll figure out the loan situation. And if you need another reference, let me know. Thank you, Ethan, for everything. He nodded and headed back down to the shop, feeling like he'd said too much but not quite regretting it. That evening, after closing time, Lena came down to the shop carrying 2 takeout containers. I ordered too much Thai food, she said. Thought you might want some. Ethan looked up from the invoice he was filling out. You didn't have to do that. I know, but I did anyway. She set one container on his desk. Pad see ew. Your mother mentioned it's your favorite. He opened the container. The smell of soy sauce and Thai basil filled the small office. When did you talk to my mom? She stopped by the loft yesterday, brought me a casserole and interrogated me about my intentions. Ethan groaned. I'm sorry. She means well, but she's protective of you. I get it. Lena sat down in the spare chair, opening her own container. She wanted to make sure I wasn't taking advantage of your kindness. What'd you tell her? That her son is annoyingly principled and impossible to take advantage of, even when I try to pay him proper rent. That got a laugh out of him. She buy that? Eventually, after she made me promise to come to Sunday dinner next week. Ethan paused mid-bite. You don't have to do that. I know, but I said yes anyway. Lena twirled noodles around her fork. Your mom's lonely, Ethan. She misses having people to take care of. She's got Riley. Riley's 4. It's not the same as having adults to talk to. She took a bite, chewed thoughtfully. Besides, I like her. She reminds me of my grandmother, same kind of no-nonsense warmth. They ate in comfortable silence for a while. Outside, the rain had picked up, drumming steadily on the metal roof of the shop. Can I ask you something? Lena said eventually. Sure. Why'd you really let me stay here? And don't say it's because the loft was empty. Ethan set down his fork. You want the honest answer? Always. Because I know what it's like to need help and not know who to ask. When Riley's mom left, I was so far in over my head I couldn't see daylight. My mom helped, but there were things I couldn't ask her to do. I had to figure out how to be a dad while running a business while not falling apart. And I did it, but barely. If someone had offered me a safe place to land during that time, no questions, no judgment, I would have taken it. He met her eyes. So when my mom called and said you needed a place, it wasn't even a question. Of course I'd help. Lena was quiet for a long moment. That's the most honest answer anyone's given me in years. People don't usually ask honest questions. Fair point. She stood, gathering her empty container. For what it's worth, I think Riley's lucky. Not every kid gets a father who shows up like you do. I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do. That's more than a lot of people manage. After she left, Ethan sat in the quiet office, listening to the rain and thinking about how easily Lena Hart had become part of his daily routine. It had only been 2 weeks, but already he noticed when she wasn't around, looked forward to the brief conversations they had between her work schedule and his. That should have worried him more than it did. The next morning brought unexpected news. Lena came down to the shop at 7:30, dressed for work, but carrying a folder that Ethan recognized, her lease documents from the old apartment. The housing authority responded, she said without preamble. They're ruling in my favor. The landlord has to return my full security deposit plus pay a fine for illegal eviction practices. That's great. There's more. He's being investigated for fraud. Apparently, I'm not the first tenant he's done this to. There are at least 4 other complaints dating back 3 years. She opened the folder, showing him the official letter. The investigator wants me to provide testimony. Ethan read the letter. The housing authority was building a case that could result in serious penalties for the landlord, possibly even criminal charges. You gonna do it? I don't know. Part of me wants to walk away. I got my money back. I'm out of that situation. Why drag it out? Because he'll just do it to someone else. Lena closed the folder. I know. But testifying means depositions, maybe court appearances. It means staying engaged with this whole mess instead of moving on. What does your gut tell you? She looked at him. My gut tells me I'm tired of fighting, but my brain tells me that's exactly why guys like him keep winning. Then listen to your brain. Is that what you do? Ethan leaned against the workbench. 4 years ago, Riley's mom left without signing any custody papers, without formally terminating her parental rights. Legally, she could have shown up any time and demanded custody. My lawyer said I should file for abandonment, get it all documented officially, but I didn't want to. I wanted to believe she'd do the right thing eventually. What changed your mind? My mom. She said, hope is fine, but paperwork is better. So I filed, got full custody, got it all legally documented. And 6 months later, Sarah tried to come back. Not because she wanted Riley, because her new boyfriend wanted to seem like a family man, and suddenly she remembered she had a kid. His jaw tightened at the memory. If I hadn't filed those papers, she could have taken Riley, just walked in and taken my daughter. Lena's eyes widened. What happened? The court looked at the custody agreement, looked at the abandonment documentation, and told Sarah she'd given up her rights. Riley stayed with me. Sarah disappeared again. He met Lena's gaze. Point is, doing the hard thing, the thing you don't want to do. Sometimes that's what protects you down the line, and protects other people too. Lena absorbed this, then nodded slowly. I'll testify. Good. She glanced at her watch. I need to get to work. But thank you for the perspective. Any time. As she walked to her car, Ethan found himself thinking about how natural it felt, having these conversations with her. Like they'd known each other longer than 2 weeks. Like they'd been doing this dance of honesty and support for years instead of days. That should definitely worry him more than it did. Wednesday afternoon brought Riley's school play, a preschool production of The 3 Little Pigs that involved more giggling than actual dialogue. Ethan sat in the tiny auditorium, camera ready, watching his daughter wear a construction paper pig nose and deliver her one line with perfect seriousness. Not by the hair of my chinny chin, the audience laughed. Riley beamed. Ethan's heart swelled with the kind of pride that felt too big for his chest. After the performance, Riley ran up to him, pig nose askew. Did you see me, Daddy? I saw you. You were perfect. Can we get ice cream? It's 4 o'clock. Please? Ethan sighed. Fine, but don't tell Grandma. They drove to the ice cream shop on Main Street, where Riley ordered a cone with sprinkles and proceeded to get more ice cream on her face than in her mouth. Ethan was wiping chocolate off her chin when someone approached their table. Lena. Well, this is a surprise, she said, smiling at Riley. What's the occasion? I was a pig, Riley announced proudly. In the school play, Ethan clarified. She had a very important line. Not by the hair of my chinny chin, Riley repeated, in case there was any doubt. Lena laughed. That is a very important line. Can I join you? Yes, Riley said immediately. Ethan gestured to the empty chair. Lena sat down, and Riley immediately launched into a detailed description of the play, complete with dramatic reenactments of all three pigs and the wolf. Watching them together, Ethan felt that warmth in his chest again, the same one he'd felt when Riley had helped Lena organize her desk supplies. There was an ease between them, a natural comfort that made something in him relax. "Daddy says you make houses," Riley said, pausing her narration. "I do. Can you make me a house?" Lena glanced at Ethan, who just shrugged. "What kind of house?" she asked Riley. "A pink one, with a slide, and a puppy room." "A puppy room? That's very specific. For when I get a puppy. Daddy says maybe when I'm older." "Daddy says maybe never," Ethan corrected gently. Riley ignored him. "Can you draw it?" Lena pulled a napkin from the dispenser and borrowed Ethan's pen. Right there at the ice cream shop table, she sketched out a simple house with a pitched roof, then added a slide coming out of a second-story window and a small room labeled puppy room in neat letters. Riley's eyes went wide. "That's my house." "It could be, if you grow up and decide you want to build it." "I'm going to build it, and I'm going to have 10 puppies." "10 seems like a lot," Ethan said. 20 puppies. Lena caught Ethan's eye and smiled. He smiled back, feeling something shift, something he couldn't quite name but recognized as dangerous. Later that evening, after Riley was in bed and Ethan had returned to the shop to finish up paperwork, Lena appeared in his office doorway. "Hey," she said. "Got a minute?" "Sure. What's up?" She came in and sat down, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "I wanted to run something by you. The bank responded to my loan application. And they're willing to approve it, but they want a co-signer for the first year, someone with established credit and proof of stable income." Ethan set down his pen. "You want me to co-sign?" "No." Lena shook her head quickly. "I would never ask you to do that. It's too much risk, especially with Riley to think about. I wanted to tell you in person that I'm going to ask Patricia Brennan instead. She's offered before and I think she'll say yes." "But you're leaving her firm." "I know, which is why I wanted to be completely transparent about it. I'm giving her 3 months' notice and offering to finish all my current projects before I transition out. It's the right thing to do and hopefully she'll still be willing to help." Ethan studied her. "You could have just told me this over text. Why come down here?" Lena met his eyes. "Because you've done so much for me already, and I didn't want you to think I was using you. This whole situation, renting from you, the references, all of it, I need you to know I'm not taking advantage." "I don't think that." "I needed to hear you say it." They sat in silence for a moment. The rain had started again, softer this time, a gentle patter against the windows. "Ask Brennan," Ethan said finally. "She knows your work. She believes in you. That's worth more than my credit score." "Thank you," Lena stood. "And Ethan, today at the ice cream shop, that meant a lot to Riley. Having you there, showing up for her play, she's lucky. I'm her dad. That's what dads do. Not all of them." After she left, Ethan sat alone in his office, thinking about co-signers and loans and the weight of trust. Lena had been right to come tell him in person, right to be transparent about her plans. But there was something else in that conversation, something unspoken but present. She cared what he thought, and that mattered to her in a way that went beyond landlord and tenant. The next week passed in a blur of work and routine. Ethan fixed cars, picked up Riley from preschool, had dinner with his mother on Sunday where Lena joined them, and charmed everyone by bringing homemade dessert and asking his mother about her garden. On Thursday evening, Lena knocked on the shop door after hours. Ethan was finishing up an oil change on a Subaru Outback. "Need something?" he asked. "Actually, yes. I have a client meeting tomorrow, one of my side projects. Young couple building their first home. They want to see my office space before they commit." "You don't have office space yet." "Exactly. So I was wondering if I could use the loft. Make it look professional, set up my drafting table, have everything ready for a presentation." Ethan wiped his hands. "It's your space. You don't need permission." "I know, but I wanted to ask anyway. They're coming at 2 o'clock. I'll make sure Riley doesn't wander in." "Riley's got a play date tomorrow. She won't be around." "Perfect. Thank you." Friday afternoon, Ethan stayed downstairs in the shop, giving Lena space for her meeting. He could hear voices drifting down. Lena's calm and professional, the client sounding young and enthusiastic. At one point he heard laughter, which he took as a good sign. The meeting lasted almost 2 hours. When the couple finally left, Ethan waited a few minutes before heading up to the loft. Lena was sitting at her drafting table, staring at a contract. "How'd it go?" he asked. She looked up, and her face broke into the biggest smile he'd seen from her. "They signed. Full commission for a custom home design. This is my first official client for the new firm." "That's fantastic." "It's terrifying," she laughed. "But also fantastic." Without thinking, Ethan crossed the room and pulled her into a hug. She stiffened for just a second, then relaxed, her arms coming up to wrap around his back. They stood like that for a moment, just long enough for Ethan to realize what he'd done, to feel how perfectly she fit against him, to notice the smell of her shampoo and the warmth of her breath against his collar. He stepped back quickly. "Sorry, that was... It's fine." Lena's cheeks were flushed. "I needed that. This whole thing has been so stressful, and having someone to celebrate with, it means something." "Well, congratulations. You earned it." She smiled. "Stay for dinner? I was going to order pizza to celebrate." "I should probably... Please, I don't want to celebrate alone." Ethan hesitated, knowing he should say no, knowing this was crossing some invisible line from helpful landlord to something more complicated. But Lena was looking at him with those honest eyes, and he found himself nodding. "Okay, pizza sounds good." They ordered from the place down the street and ate, sitting on the loft floor talking about everything and nothing. Her plans for the new firm, Riley's upcoming birthday party, the weird noise the Subaru had been making that Ethan finally tracked down to a loose heat shield. "Can I ask you something personal?" Lena said, finishing her second slice. "You can ask. I might not answer. Do you ever think about dating again after Riley's mom?" Ethan took a drink of water, buying time. "Sometimes, but it's complicated." "Because of Riley?" "Partly. Mostly because I don't trust easily anymore. Sarah walked out without warning, without explanation. That kind of thing makes you careful." "Careful is good. Better than reckless. What about you? You ever been married?" "Engaged once. Didn't work out." Lena picked at the crust of her pizza. "He wanted me to give up architecture, stay home, be supportive. I wanted a partner, not a parent. We couldn't find middle ground. His loss." She smiled. "That's kind of you to say." "It's true. You're talented, driven, smart. Any guy who can't see that isn't worth your time." Lena looked at him for a long moment, something shifting in her expression. "You're different than I expected, Ethan Cole." "Different how?" "I don't know, just different." She stood, gathering the pizza box. "Thank you. For celebrating with me, for everything." Ethan stood too. "You're welcome. And Lena, you're going to do great with this firm. I can tell." "How can you tell?" "Because you care. That's half the battle right there." As he walked back down to the shop, Ethan knew he was in trouble. The careful distance he'd been maintaining was eroding, replaced by something warmer and more dangerous. He liked Lena, not just as a tenant or an acquaintance, but as a person he wanted to spend time with, wanted to know better, wanted to see succeed. And judging by the way she'd looked at him tonight, she might be feeling the same way. That should terrify him. Instead, it felt like possibility. The possibility Ethan felt that night turned into reality faster than he'd anticipated. 2 days later, on a Sunday afternoon while Riley was at a birthday party, his phone rang with an unfamiliar number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Mr. Cole? This is Detective Marcus Chen with the County Fraud Investigation Unit. I'm calling about your tenant, Lena Hart." Ethan's stomach dropped. "Is she all right?" "She's fine. I'm actually calling because Ms. Hart listed you as a character reference in our investigation of her former landlord, David Ruskin. I understand you helped her retrieve her belongings from the property." "I did." "Can you tell me what you observed that day?" Ethan recounted the confrontation at the apartment, Ruskin's attempts to charge illegal storage fees, the way he'd tried to intimidate Lena into paying. Detective Chen listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes. "Mr. Cole, would you be willing to provide a written statement to that effect?" Absolutely. What's this about? We're building a case against Mr. Ruskin for a pattern of tenant fraud spanning at least 5 years. Ms. Hart's complaint opened the door, but we've since uncovered evidence of systematic exploitation, illegal fees, fraudulent damage claims, security deposit theft. We're talking about 47 victims and approximately $200,000 in stolen funds. Ethan let out a low whistle. That's substantial. It is, and Ms. Hart's willingness to testify is crucial to the case. But I wanted to make you aware that Mr. Ruskin is facing significant legal consequences. People in his position sometimes lash out when they feel cornered. You think he might retaliate? I think it's a possibility worth mentioning. If you notice anything unusual, anyone watching the property, strange phone calls, anything that feels off, contact me immediately. Chen gave him a direct number. And please pass this information to Ms. Hart as well. She needs to be aware. After hanging up, Ethan sat in the quiet shop processing this new information. $200,000. 47 victims. This wasn't just a landlord being difficult. This was organized crime. He walked up to the loft and knocked. Lena answered, wearing paint-splattered overalls, her hair tied back with a bandana. Working on something? He asked. Sample boards for the couple I'm designing for. Come in. The loft had transformed into a proper design studio. Her drafting table was covered with material samples, wood finishes, tile patterns, fabric swatches. The walls held sketches and elevations of what would become someone's home. Detective Chen called me, Ethan said. Lena set down the paintbrush she'd been cleaning. About the case? He wanted a statement about the day we moved your stuff out, but he also wanted me to warn you, Ruskin might not take this lying down. I know. She walked to the window, looking out at the street below. The detective already told me. Ruskin's lawyer contacted me yesterday trying to get me to drop the complaint, offered me $5,000 to go away quietly. Ethan's jaw tightened. What did you say? I said no, obviously. She turned to face him. But it scared me, Ethan, not the lawyer. I expected legal pressure. What scared me was how easily I could have taken that money. $5,000 would cover my entire loan gap. I could start my firm tomorrow, no strings attached. But you didn't take it. Because it's blood money. Every dollar came from people like me, people he manipulated and stole from. Taking it would make me complicit. Her voice was steady, but her hand shook slightly. I just wish doing the right thing didn't feel so expensive. Ethan crossed to where she stood. You're not alone in this. Whatever happens with Ruskin, you've got people backing you up. People like you? People like me. And Detective Chen and the Housing Authority, and probably a few dozen other victims who are finding their courage because you found yours first. Lena's eyes glistened. I didn't ask to be anyone's hero. Heroes never do. That's what makes them heroes. She laughed, a wet sound that was half sob. You're very philosophical for a mechanic. I've had a lot of time to think while changing oil. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing paint across her cheek. Ethan reached up without thinking and brushed it away with his thumb. The gesture was intimate, gentle, and they both froze. Sorry, he said, not moving his hand. Don't be. They stood like that for a heartbeat, then two. Ethan could feel the warmth of her skin, see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes, notice the way her breath had quickened slightly. Then his phone rang, shattering the moment. He stepped back, pulling out his phone. His mother. I should take this. Of course. He walked down to the shop to answer. Hey, Mom. Riley's party is over. Should I bring her by the shop or straight home? Ethan checked his watch. Almost 4 o'clock. Bring her by. I want to hear about the party. 20 minutes later, his mother's car pulled up, and Riley exploded out of the back seat, carrying a goodie bag and wearing a paper crown. Daddy, we had a bounce house and face painting. Look, I'm a butterfly. Sure enough, Riley's face was decorated with colorful wings and antennae. She spun in a circle, arms outstretched. Beautiful, Ethan said, crouching down to her level. Did you have fun? So much fun. Can I have a bounce house for my birthday? We'll see. That means no, Riley informed her grandmother sagely. Ethan's mother laughed. Smart girl. Ethan, I need to talk to you about something. Sure. Riley, go wash your face, okay? The paint's starting to smudge. Riley ran off to the shop bathroom. Ethan's mother waited until she was out of earshot. I ran into Sarah yesterday, she said quietly. Ethan went very still. Where? At the grocery store. She was with someone, a man, looked about her age. She asked about Riley. What did you tell her? That Riley's fine and doesn't need her showing up to disrupt things. His mother's voice was firm. But Ethan, she seemed different, sober, stable. She said she's been in therapy, working on herself. Good for her. That doesn't change anything. I know. I'm just telling you because she asked for your number. I didn't give it to her, but she said she might try to reach out through the court. Ethan felt the old anger rising, the fury he'd buried 4 years ago when Sarah had tried to take Riley back, when she'd showed up after abandoning them both and expected to be welcomed like nothing had happened. She has no rights. The custody agreement is ironclad. I know, but I wanted you to be prepared. Riley came bounding back, face still slightly paint-streaked but cleaner. Grandma, can I stay at your house tonight? Please. Ethan's mother looked at him questioningly. He nodded. Sure, sweetheart. Go get your overnight bag from Grandma's car. After they left, Ethan stood in the empty shop, feeling the familiar weight of single parenthood settle back onto his shoulders. For a few weeks, things had felt lighter. Lena's presence, the easy routine they'd fallen into, the way she made both him and Riley smile. It had made everything seem manageable, but Sarah's potential return was a reminder that nothing was ever truly settled, that the past could come back anytime and demand attention. He was still processing this when Lena came down the stairs, now changed into clean clothes. Is everything okay? She asked. I heard voices. My mother stopped by. Apparently Riley's mom is back in town. Lena's expression shifted. The one who left? That's the one. She's been gone 4 years, and now she's asking about Riley. He sat down on a rolling stool, suddenly exhausted. I shouldn't be surprised. This is what Sarah does, disappears when things get hard, shows up when she feels like playing house again. What are you going to do? Nothing. She gave up her rights. Unless she files something with the court, there's nothing to do. Lena sat down on the stool next to him. That must be terrifying anyway. It is, because the law is clear, but courts can be unpredictable. And Riley's old enough now to have opinions, to ask questions. If Sarah pushes this, I might have to explain to my 4-year-old why her mother left and why she can't just come back. You'll handle it. The same way you handle everything, with honesty and care. Ethan looked at her. You have a lot of faith in me, because you've earned it. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Lena spoke again. Ethan, I need to tell you something. Patricia Brennan agreed to co-sign my loan. I'm giving notice at the firm tomorrow. In 3 months, I'll officially be on my own. That's incredible. It's terrifying, but I wanted you to know because it might affect my living situation. Once I have the loan funds, I'll be able to afford a real office space, maybe even an apartment closer to downtown. I'm not going anywhere immediately, but I wanted to be transparent about my plans. Something in Ethan's chest tightened. You're moving out? Eventually? Not right away. I need to find the right space, get everything set up properly, but yes, eventually I'll need to transition into something more permanent. Right, of course. He stood up, suddenly needing to move. That makes sense. This was always temporary. Ethan, I'm happy for you, Lena. Really. You're building something great. She stood too. It doesn't have to change anything between us. What is there between us to change? The question hung in the air, sharp and honest. Lena met his eyes. I don't know, she said quietly, but it feels like something. Before Ethan could respond, his phone rang again. Detective Chen. Mr. Cole, I need to inform you of a development. David Ruskin posted bail this afternoon. He's out pending trial. Ethan's hand tightened on the phone. I thought he was being held. He was. But his lawyer argued flight risk was minimal and bail was granted. I'm calling all our witnesses to make them aware. Please maintain normal security protocols and report anything suspicious. After hanging up, Ethan relayed the information to Lena. Her face went pale. He's out? Posted bail, but that doesn't mean he knows where you are or that he'll do anything about it. Ethan, he knows where I work. He has my car registration, my employment information, It's all in the lease documents. If he wants to find me, he won't. There's no benefit to him contacting you directly. It would only strengthen the case against him. But even as Ethan said it, he didn't feel certain. Men like Ruskin operated on ego and anger. Legal consequences didn't always factor into their decision-making. "Stay here tonight," he said. "Lock the door. I'll be in the shop late anyway. If anything feels wrong, call me." "I'm not a child who needs protecting." "I know. But you're also a witness in a major fraud case, and the defendant just made bail. Let me worry about your safety. You can go back to being independent tomorrow." Lena smiled slightly. "Fine, but only because you asked nicely." That night, Ethan worked until almost midnight, organizing inventory and doing maintenance he'd been putting off, partly because the work needed doing, partly because he wanted to be close in case Lena needed anything. Around 11:30, he saw her light turn off. He waited another 30 minutes, then locked up the shop and headed to his truck. His phone buzzed with a text. From Lena. "Thank you for today, for everything. Sleep well." He typed back, "You too. Lock your door." "Already done." "Good night, Ethan." He sat in his truck for a moment, looking up at the dark loft window, before driving to his mother's house to sleep in his old bedroom while Riley occupied the guest room. The next few days passed without incident. Ruskin stayed away. Lena gave her notice at Brennan Design Group, which was received better than expected. Patricia was genuinely happy for her, offering to send referrals and maintain a professional relationship. On Wednesday evening, Ethan was closing up when a black sedan pulled into the lot. A man got out, tall, well-dressed, with the kind of presence that announced importance. "Ethan Cole?" the man asked. "That's me." The man handed him a business card. "Frank Morrison, Morrison and Associates. I represent David Ruskin. I'd like to discuss Ms. Hart's testimony in the upcoming case." Ethan glanced at the card, then back at Morrison. "I'm not Ms. Hart's lawyer." "No, but you are her landlord, and you were present during the incident at Mr. Ruskin's property. I'm hoping we can resolve this matter civilly, without dragging things through a lengthy trial." "You mean you want to buy her silence?" Morrison smiled thinly. "I mean, I'd like to propose a settlement that benefits everyone involved. Ms. Hart receives compensation for her trouble, Mr. Ruskin avoids the expense and exposure of a trial, and you don't have to waste time giving depositions." "Not interested." "Mr. Colette, I don't think you understand the scope of what you're involved in. This case could take months, possibly years. During that time, Ms. Hart will be under intense scrutiny. Her business, her reputation, her personal life, all of it becomes fair game in discovery. Are you prepared for that kind of exposure?" Ethan stepped closer. "Let me be clear. Ms. Hart already refused your settlement offer. Coming here to pressure her through me isn't just unethical, it's harassment. Leave." Morrison's smile disappeared. "You're making a mistake." "I'll live with it. Get off my property." Morrison left without another word. Ethan immediately went up to the loft and knocked. Lena opened the door, took one look at his face, and said, "What happened?" He told her about Morrison's visit, the thinly veiled threats, the attempt to use him as pressure. "They're getting desperate," Lena said, pacing the loft. "The trial date is in 6 weeks. They're running out of time to make this go away quietly. What do you want to do?" "What I should have done from the beginning, go on offense." She grabbed her phone. "I'm calling Detective Chen. If they want to play dirty, we document everything and add it to the case file." While she made the call, Ethan stood at the window, watching the street. No sign of Morrison's sedan, no suspicious cars. But the lawyer's visit had unsettled him in a way he couldn't quite articulate. Lena finished her call and came to stand beside him. "Chen's sending a patrol car to do a drive-by tonight, just as a precaution. He said Morrison's visit was likely just intimidation, but it's worth noting for the record." "Are you scared?" "Terrified, but also angry. I didn't ask for any of this. I just wanted my security deposit back. Now I'm caught up in some massive fraud case with lawyers and detectives and people trying to buy my silence." She laughed bitterly. "Sometimes I wonder if I should have just walked away." "You did the right thing." "How can you be sure?" "Because 47 other people needed someone to go first. You were brave enough to be that person." He turned to face her. "And because you're not the kind of person who walks away when things get hard. You're the kind who stands your ground." Lena's eyes searched his face. Is that what you see when you look at me? That's exactly what I see. She moved closer, close enough that he could smell her perfume, see the pulse beating in her throat. Ethan, what are we doing? I don't know. Because it feels like we're dancing around something neither of us wants to name. He should step back, should maintain the distance that had kept things safe and uncomplicated. But standing there in the warm light of the loft, with Lena looking at him like he was something worth holding on to, Ethan found he didn't want safety anymore. Maybe we should stop dancing around it, he said quietly. And do what? Be honest. I like you, Lena. Not as a tenant, not as someone I'm helping. I like you as a person I want to spend time with, want to know better, want in my life beyond this temporary arrangement. Lena's breath caught. I like you too. I have for weeks, but I didn't want to complicate things. You have Riley to think about, and I have this legal mess, and neither of us needs the added stress of... He kissed her. It wasn't planned, wasn't calculated. One moment they were talking, and the next his hands were framing her face and his mouth was on hers, and she was kissing him back with a kind of certainty that made his heart race. When they broke apart, both slightly breathless, Lena smiled. That was unexpected. Sorry, should I have asked first? Don't you dare apologize. She pulled him back down for another kiss, this one slower, deeper, full of all the things they hadn't been saying for weeks. When they finally separated, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. This is probably a terrible idea. Probably. You're dealing with a fraud case. I'm a single father with an ex who might resurface. We're both juggling too much already. All true. But I don't want to walk away from this. Neither do I. They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other in the quiet loft while the world continued outside. So what now? Lena asked. Now we take it one day at a time. No pressure, no expectations. Just see where this goes. That sounds reasonable. It does. Completely reasonable and mature. Absolutely. She grinned. We're going to be terrible at reasonable and mature, aren't we? Probably. He kissed her forehead. But we can try. The next morning brought a different kind of complication. Ethan was under a Nissan Altima, replacing a worn-out muffler, when Riley appeared beside the car. Daddy? Yeah, sweetheart? He rolled out from under the car. Why is Lena special? Ethan sat up, wiping grease from his hands. What do you mean? Grandma said Lena is special to you. What does that mean? Ethan sent a mental curse toward his well-meaning but interfering mother. It means Lena is my friend, and friends are special. Riley considered this. Is she your girlfriend? Where did you hear that word? Emma at school has a boyfriend. They hold hands at recess. Ethan took a breath. 4 years old and already navigating relationship terminology. Lena is someone I care about very much. And yes, she's becoming more than just a friend. Does she care about you too? I think so. Does she care about me? That was the real question, wasn't it? The one that mattered most. Why don't you ask her yourself? Riley looked skeptical but intrigued. Right now? She's working in the loft. Go knock and ask if she has a minute. Riley ran off, ponytail bouncing. Ethan stayed where he was, torn between wanting to supervise the conversation and knowing his daughter needed to ask these questions herself. 5 minutes later, Riley came back. Lena said she cares about me very much and she likes spending time with me. And what did you say? I said I like spending time with her too, and I asked if she would stay forever. Ethan's heart clenched. What did she say to that? She said she doesn't know about forever, but she's not planning to go anywhere right now. Riley climbed into his lap, something she rarely did anymore. Daddy, is Lena going to be like a mom? No, sweetheart. Nobody's going to replace your mom or try to be something they're not. Lena is Lena, and if she's part of our lives, she'll be part of our lives as herself. But what if I want her to be like a mom? Ethan wrapped his arms around his daughter. Then we take it slow and see what happens, but right now she's just Lena. Is that okay? Riley nodded against his chest. I like Lena. Me too, baby. Me too. That evening, after Riley had gone home with his mother, Ethan found Lena in the loft, staring at her laptop with a frown. Problem? He asked. She looked up. The couple I'm designing for, They want to see progress on the plans by Friday. That's 2 days from now, and I'm barely halfway through the preliminary drawings. What do you need? About 48 hours and no distractions. She rubbed her eyes. Which means I'm going to be useless company for the next few days. So work. I'll stay out of your way. Ethan, I don't want you to feel like I'm ignoring you. What happened last night? He crossed the room and kissed her, quick and certain. Work. I'll be here when you come up for air. She smiled. You're remarkably understanding. I own a business too. I know what deadlines look like. For the next 2 days, Lena barely left the loft. Ethan brought her coffee in the mornings and takeout in the evenings, checking in without hovering, supporting without smothering. He could see the stress building in the tension of her shoulders, the dark circles under her eyes. On Friday morning, she came down to the shop at 6 a.m., looking exhausted but triumphant. I finished, she said. Want to see? He followed her up to the loft. The drafting table was covered with detailed architectural plans, elevations, floor plans, site layouts, all rendered with meticulous precision. This is amazing, Ethan said, studying the drawings. It's good work. Not my best. I was rushing, but it's good. When's the meeting? 10 o'clock. I need to shower and get presentable and somehow convince them I haven't been surviving on coffee and adrenaline for 2 days straight. You'll be great. They're lucky to have you. She kissed him, quick and grateful. Thank you. For the space to work. For not making me feel guilty about being unavailable. That's what this is. We support each other's work, we show up when it matters, and we trust each other to handle our own responsibilities. When did you become so wise about relationships? I'm making it up as I go. She laughed. So am I. The meeting went well. The couple loved the preliminary plans and signed off on moving forward to detailed design. Lena called Ethan that afternoon, her voice bright with success. They want to break ground in the spring. This is really happening. Congratulations. That's huge. I'm buying dinner tonight. Real dinner, not takeout. Be ready at 7. They went to a small Italian restaurant downtown, sat across from each other in a corner booth, and talked about everything except work. Lena told him about growing up in a small town in Oregon, about her grandmother who'd encouraged her to study architecture, about the moment she'd known it was what she wanted to do with her life. Ethan told her about his father, who taught him everything about cars before dying of a heart attack when Ethan was 19, about opening the shop as a way to honor that legacy, about the fear and pride of becoming a father, even under impossible circumstances. You miss him, Lena said. Your dad. Every day. He would have loved Riley, would have been the kind of grandfather who teaches her how to change her own oil and tells terrible jokes. He sounds wonderful. He was. Flawed, but wonderful. Ethan took her hand across the table. I think he would have liked you too. Yeah? You're honest. He valued that above almost everything else, said you could forgive a lot of mistakes if someone had the courage to own them. They lingered over dessert, reluctant to end the evening. When they finally left, Ethan drove back to the shop with Lena's hand in his, feeling something settle in his chest, something that felt remarkably like contentment. At the loft door, Lena turned to him. Do you want to come in? Riley's at my mom's tonight. I know. He understood what she was offering. Not just coffee or conversation, but something more. And he wanted it, wanted her, with an intensity that should have scared him, but didn't. Yeah, he said. I want to come in. They made it 3 steps inside before they were kissing again, urgent and hungry, weeks of restraint finally breaking free. Ethan backed her against the wall, his hands in her hair, her legs wrapped around his waist. Bedroom, she gasped between kisses. He carried her there without breaking contact, laying her down on the bed with a gentleness that contrasted with the heat between them. This was trust and want, and something deeper, something neither of them had named but both recognized. Afterward, they lay tangled together, Lena's head on his chest, his fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder. That was, she started. Yeah. Are we doing this? Actually doing this? Ethan kissed the top of her head. I think we already are. She smiled against his skin. Good, because I don't want to stop. Neither do I. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, and for the first time in 4 years, Ethan didn't feel like he was carrying the weight of the world alone. He had help now, He had a partner. He had Lena. The morning after brought reality crashing back in the form of Ethan's phone ringing at 6 a.m. He reached for it groggily, careful not to wake Lena, and saw Detective Chen's name on the screen. "Cole," he answered quietly, slipping out of bed and into the main room. "We have a situation. Ruskin's lawyer filed a motion to dismiss the fraud charges, claiming prosecutorial misconduct. It's baseless, but it's going to delay the trial by at least 2 months." Ethan rubbed his face. "What does that mean for Lena?" "It means she stays in limbo longer. And it means Ruskin stays out on bail, free to continue his intimidation tactics." Chen paused. "There's more. Last night, someone spray-painted threatening messages on the building where Ms. Hart used to live. We can't prove it was Ruskin, but the timing is suspect." "What kind of messages?" "The kind that suggest he knows she's the primary witness. Mr. Cole, I need you to keep an eye on Miss Hart. I don't think Ruskin will do anything directly. He's too smart for that. But he might escalate the psychological pressure." After hanging up, Ethan stood in the quiet loft, looking at Lena still asleep in the bedroom. She looked peaceful, unguarded, her dark hair spread across the pillow. The idea of someone threatening her made his blood run cold. He made coffee, trying to process this new development. 2 more months of waiting. 2 more months of Ruskin out on bail, free to harass and intimidate. 2 more months of Lena living with the stress of pending testimony. She appeared in the doorway 20 minutes later, wearing one of his shirts, her hair messy from sleep. "Morning," she said, smiling. Then she saw his face. "What happened?" He told her about Chen's call, about the motion to dismiss, about the vandalism. He watched her absorb it, saw the fear flash across her face before she locked it down behind that professional mask he'd come to recognize. 2 more months, she said quietly. "At least. And he's still out there." "Yeah." She poured herself coffee, her hands steady despite everything. "Okay, then we deal with it. I'm not backing down now." "I know you're not. But Lena, if this gets dangerous, it won't. Ruskin's a coward who preys on people who can't fight back. Now that I have resources, support, legal backing, he's just noise." She took a sip of coffee. "Besides, I have you." "You do. And you're not going to let anything happen to me." It wasn't a question. Ethan crossed to where she stood and wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "No, I'm not." They stood like that for a long moment, drawing strength from each other, before the demands of the day pulled them apart. Lena had a conference call with her new clients at 9. Ethan had a full schedule of repairs waiting in the shop. But first, he needed to have a difficult conversation with his mother. He drove to her house after dropping Riley at preschool, finding her in the garden pulling weeds from the flower beds. "We need to talk," he said without preamble. She looked up, wiping dirt from her hands. "About Lena?" "About boundaries. Riley told me you said Lena was special to me." "She is, isn't she?" "That's not the point. The point is Riley is 4 years old, and she doesn't need you planting ideas about relationships in her head before I've even figured out what those relationships are." His mother stood, her expression unreadable. "You're sleeping with her. That's none of your business." "It is when it affects my granddaughter." "Ethan, I love that you're finding happiness. Truly. But Riley has already lost one mother. What happens when Lena realizes that being with a single father is more work than she bargained for? What happens when she moves on to someone without complications?" The words hit harder than they should have. "You don't know Lena." "I know she's young, ambitious, building a career. Those things don't leave much room for instant families." His mother's voice softened. "I'm not saying she's a bad person. I'm saying you need to be careful, for Riley's sake." Ethan took a breath, fighting down the anger. "I'm being careful. But I'm also allowed to have a life beyond being Riley's father, and Lena, she's not some temporary distraction. She's important to me." "Then introduce her properly to Riley. Let them build a real relationship, not just casual interactions in the shop. If this is serious, treat it seriously." She had a point, much as he hated to admit it. "Fine. I'll talk to Lena about it." "Good." His mother pulled off her gardening gloves. "And Ethan, I really do want you to be happy. I just want you to be smart about it, too." "I'm trying." That evening, he brought up his mother's concerns with Lena. They were sitting on the loft floor, eating Chinese takeout directly from the containers when he said, We should talk about Riley. Lena set down her chopsticks. Okay. My mom thinks we need to be more intentional about how we handle this. Not hide the relationship, but also not confuse Riley about what's happening. I agree. What did you have in mind? Honestly, I don't know. I've never done this before. Sarah and I were together before Riley was born. There was no introducing her to the concept of me dating someone new. Lena was quiet for a moment. What if we start small? Family dinner once a week, maybe? Something structured where Riley sees us together in a normal context, not just me as the tenant upstairs. That could work? And we talk to her, explain that we care about each other, that you and I are dating, but that doesn't change how we feel about her. You've thought about this. Of course I have. Riley's part of your life, which means she's part of mine now. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. Lena met his eyes. Ethan, I know this is complicated. I know I'm coming into a situation that's already established, already has rhythms and patterns I don't fully understand yet. But I want to try, if you'll let me. I want that too. They decided on Friday night dinners. Nothing fancy, just the three of them sharing a meal and time together. The first one was scheduled for that week, giving them a few days to prepare. On Wednesday, everything changed again. Ethan was in the shop, replacing brake pads on a Honda CR-V, when a woman walked in. She was thin, with blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing jeans and a nervous expression. It took him a moment to recognize her. Sarah. He slid out from under the car, his heart pounding. What are you doing here? I need to talk to you about Riley. You have no right to talk about Riley. You gave that up 4 years ago. I know. And I'm not here to ask for custody or visitation or anything like that. Sarah twisted her hands together. I'm here to apologize and to ask for your forgiveness. Ethan stood, wiping grease from his hands with a rag, buying time to process this. Sarah looked different, healthier, more present. The glazed, distant look she'd had during their relationship was gone. I don't need your apology, he said finally. Maybe not, but I need to give it. Ethan, I was a mess when Riley was born. Postpartum depression, addiction issues I hadn't dealt with. A relationship I was terrified of ruining. I handled it in the worst possible way, by running. I left you to raise our daughter alone, and that was unforgivable. Yeah, it was. I've been in therapy for 2 years, rehab for 18 months before that. I'm sober, I'm stable, and I'm finally dealing with the things that made me such a terrible mother. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. I'm not asking to be part of Riley's life. I just needed you to know that I'm sorry, that I see now what I took from both of you. Ethan didn't know what to feel. Anger, yes, but also a strange, hollow sadness for the woman Sarah could have been, the family they might have had if she'd been capable of staying. Are you clean? He asked. 3 years next month. And you're really not here to ask for custody? No, I signed those papers. I meant it then, even if I didn't understand what I was doing. And I mean it now. She pulled an envelope from her purse. This is a notarized statement reaffirming my termination of parental rights. My lawyer said it's not necessary. The original agreement stands. But I wanted you to have it anyway. For peace of mind, Ethan took the envelope, still wary. Why now? Because I'm getting married. To a good man who knows my history and loves me anyway. And before I start a new chapter, I needed to close this one properly. To take responsibility for what I did and acknowledge the damage I caused. Sarah wiped her eyes. You're a good father, Ethan. Riley's lucky to have you, and I'm sorry I couldn't be the partner you deserved. She turned to leave, then paused. Your mother said you're seeing someone. I hope she's good to you. You deserve that. After she left, Ethan stood alone in the shop, holding the envelope and feeling like he'd just been hit by a truck. 4 years of anger and fear and resentment, and Sarah walks in with an apology and legal paperwork, trying to tie up loose ends like their failed relationship was just another item on her recovery checklist. He called Lena. She answered on the second ring. Hey, I'm in the middle of a... Sarah came to the shop. Silence. Then, I'm coming down. 5 minutes later, Lena appeared. Her laptop still in hand like she'd run out mid-sentence. What happened? He told her everything. The apology, the therapy and sobriety, the notarized statement. Lena listened without interrupting, her expression unreadable. "How do you feel?" she asked when he finished. "I don't know. Angry that she thinks an apology fixes anything. Relieved that she's not trying to take Riley. Sad for what we could have been if she'd gotten help sooner." He sat down on a rolling stool, mostly just exhausted. Lena set down her laptop and came to stand in front of him. "Do you believe her? About not wanting custody?" "Yeah, I do. She seemed genuinely different, present, accountable. The Sarah I knew couldn't have apologized like that. She would have made excuses, blamed me, convinced herself she was the victim." "So what are you going to do?" "Nothing. She gave me the paperwork. She said her piece. There's nothing left to do except move forward." He pulled Lena closer, resting his head against her stomach. "I just needed to hear your voice, to remember that my life isn't defined by Sarah anymore." She ran her fingers through his hair. "It's not. You built something good here, a business, a home for Riley, a life that works. Sarah doesn't get credit for any of that." "I know. And you're not alone anymore. Whatever comes next, we handle it together." He looked up at her. "Together. I like the sound of that." That Friday, they had their first family dinner. Lena came down from the loft at 6, carrying a homemade lasagna that smelled incredible. Riley was already there, helping Ethan set the small table in the shop office. "Lena!" Riley ran over, hugging Lena's legs. "Did you make that?" "I did. My grandmother's recipe. Think you'll like it?" "I like everything." They ate together, Riley chattering about preschool drama and showing Lena a painting she'd made of a house with a puppy in the yard. Lena asked questions, made Riley laugh, treated her with the same genuine interest she showed everyone. Watching them together, Ethan felt something settle in his chest. This felt right. Natural. Like pieces clicking into place. After dinner, while Riley was in the bathroom washing her hands, Lena turned to Ethan. "She's wonderful," she said quietly. "She likes you too." "I can tell. She keeps asking if I'm staying for dessert." "Are you?" "If you want me to." "Always." They had ice cream, Riley's favorite, chocolate with rainbow sprinkles, and watched a kid's movie on Ethan's laptop. Riley sat between them on the couch, her head eventually drooping onto Lena's shoulder as sleep crept in. "I should get her to my mom's," Ethan whispered. "Let her sleep a few more minutes. She's comfortable." They sat in the quiet office, Riley snoring softly, the movie playing to an audience that was no longer watching. This was domesticity. This was family. And it terrified Ethan how much he wanted it to last. The next week brought new challenges. Lena's loan was approved, which meant she needed to start looking for office space. They spent Saturday afternoon driving around town, visiting potential locations. "This one's too expensive," Lena said, looking at a converted warehouse downtown. "And this one's too far from residential neighborhoods." "What about that space on Maple Street, the one above the bookstore?" "Let's check it out." The space was perfect. 1,200 square feet, good natural light, room for a drafting table and client meetings. The lease was reasonable, the location ideal. "I could make this work," Lena said, standing in the empty room and envisioning her future. Ethan stood in the doorway, watching her. This was what she'd been working toward. Independence, her own firm, a space that was entirely hers. And he was happy for her, truly. But he also knew what it meant. Once she had office space, there was no reason to stay in the loft. She could find her own apartment, build a life separate from his and Riley's. "You should take it," he said. "You think?" "I think it's exactly what you need." She signed the lease that afternoon. Move-in date, 3 weeks. That evening, they were back in the loft when Lena brought up the inevitable question. "We need to talk about what happens when I move out." Ethan had been dreading this conversation. "Okay. I was thinking I don't have to move out completely, not right away. I could keep renting the loft, use it as living space while the office is just for work." "Lena, that doesn't make financial sense. You'd be paying for 2 spaces." "I know, but I like it here. I like being close to you and Riley. I like the routine we've built." "You're going to need an apartment eventually, something more permanent than a loft above a garage." "Why?" She turned to face him fully. "Why can't this be permanent?" "Because you deserve more than this. A real home, not a temporary space I threw together. What if I don't want more than this? What if this is exactly what I want?" Ethan didn't know how to respond to that. The idea of Lena staying, of this arrangement becoming something long-term, something real, it was everything he wanted and everything that scared him. "We don't have to decide tonight," he said finally, "but we do need to decide eventually. Ethan, I need to know if this is just a convenient arrangement or if it's something more." "It's more. You know it's more." "Then why won't you ask me to stay?" "Because I don't want you to stay out of obligation or convenience. I want you to stay because it's what you genuinely want, not because you feel like you owe me something." Lena's eyes flashed. "You think I'm staying out of obligation?" "I think you're grateful for the help I gave you when you needed it, and maybe that's clouding your judgment about what you actually want long term. That's insulting. It's honest. No, it's you being scared. You're terrified that I'll leave like Sarah did, so you're pushing me away before I can hurt you." The words hit like the slap. Ethan stood up, needing space. "That's not fair." "It's true though, isn't it? You're so busy protecting yourself and Riley that you can't see that I'm not going anywhere. I'm here, Ethan. I'm choosing to be here, but I need you to choose me back." "I am choosing you." "Then ask me to stay." They stood on opposite sides of the room, the tension thick enough to cut. Ethan wanted to ask her to stay, wanted to pull her close and tell her that he loved having her here, loved the life they were building together. But the fear was stronger. The fear that this was temporary, that she'd wake up one day and realize that being with a single father was too hard, that she deserved someone without complications. "I can't," he said quietly. "Not yet." Lena's face fell. "Then I guess I have my answer." She grabbed her jacket and left, the door closing behind her with a finality that made Ethan's chest ache. He'd just pushed away the best thing that had happened to him in years, and he had no idea how to fix it. The next few days were tense. Lena was polite but distant, focusing on work and avoiding extended conversations. Ethan gave her space, respecting her need to process, but it was killing him. On Tuesday, Detective Chen called with news. Ruskin's lawyer withdrew the motion to dismiss. The trial is back on schedule, 3 weeks from now. That's good, right? It's excellent. It means they know they're losing and they're trying to cut their losses. We're preparing witness testimony now. Ms. Hart will need to come in for prep sessions. Ethan relayed the information to Lena via text, keeping it professional. She responded with a simple thumbs-up emoji. That evening, his mother showed up at the shop unannounced. "What did you do?" she demanded. "What are you talking about?" "Lena. She came to see me today, crying. Said you told her she should move out." "I didn't tell her to move out. I just said she shouldn't stay out of obligation." His mother stared at him like he'd grown a second head. "Ethan Michael Cole, are you really that stupid?" "Excuse me?" "That woman is in love with you. She's building her entire future around being close to you and Riley. And instead of recognizing that, you're pushing her away because you're scared." "I'm not scared. I'm being practical." "You're being a coward." His mother's voice softened. "Honey, I know Sarah hurt you. I know you're terrified of putting Riley through that kind of loss again. But Lena isn't Sarah. She's proven that over and over. And if you don't fix this, you're going to lose the best thing that's happened to you in years." After his mother left, Ethan sat alone in the shop, her words echoing in his head. She was right. He'd been so focused on protecting himself and Riley from potential hurt that he'd been hurting them both in the present. Lena had shown up for them, consistently and without reservation, and he'd repaid that loyalty with doubt. He had to fix this. The next morning, he knocked on the loft door at 7 a.m. Lena opened it, looking surprised. "Can we talk?" he asked. "I'm getting ready for work. Please, just 5 minutes." She stepped back, letting him in. The loft was partially packed, boxes stacked in the corner, her drafting table already disassembled. "You're really leaving," he said. "The office opens next week. I need to start transitioning." "What if I don't want you to?" Lena crossed her arms. "You made your position clear." "I was wrong. Lena, I was scared and stupid, and I pushed you away because I didn't know how to handle feeling this much for someone." He took a step closer. "But my mother's right. You're not Sarah. You've never been Sarah. And treating you like you might leave at any moment is unfair to everything you've given us." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying stay. Not because you feel obligated, not because it's convenient. Stay because I want you here, because Riley wants you here. Because this loft, this life, this whole situation works better when you're part of it. Lena's eyes glistened. And if I stay, what does that mean? It means we build something real, not temporary, not cautious, real. You and me and Riley, figuring this out together. I'm terrified. Me too, but I'd rather be terrified with you than safe without you. She crossed the distance between them and kissed him, hard and certain. Okay, I'll stay. Yeah? Yeah, but Ethan? No more pushing me away when you get scared. We talk through it like adults. Deal. They stood in the half-packed loft, holding each other, and Ethan felt the fear finally start to release its grip. This was a risk, but it was a risk worth taking, because Lena Hart wasn't going anywhere, and neither was he. The decision to stay changed everything and nothing at the same time. Lena unpacked the boxes she'd started filling, putting her books back on the shelves and her drafting supplies back in their places. But the real shift was internal, a commitment made visible, a future acknowledged instead of avoided. The trial date loomed 2 weeks away, and Lena spent her evenings preparing testimony with Detective Chen in the prosecutor's office. Ethan watched her transform from the anxious woman who'd shown up at his door with everything she owned into someone formidable, someone who refused to be intimidated. "They're going to ask about my relationship with you," she said one night, reviewing her prep notes at the kitchen table. "The defense will try to paint me as someone with an agenda, someone who's exaggerating claims because I have support now that I didn't have before." What did the prosecutor say? That the truth is the truth, regardless of who's standing beside me when I tell it. That Ruskin's attempts to discredit me will backfire if I stay calm and stick to the facts. She set down the papers. "But Ethan, they're going to dig into everything. My job, my finances, my personal life. You and Riley might come up." "Then they come up. We're not hiding. I just don't want this to affect Riley. She's already dealing with so much change." Riley had, in fact, adapted to the new normal with the easy resilience of childhood. She'd asked exactly once why Lena wasn't moving to her new office, and when Ethan explained that Lena liked living in the loft, Riley had simply nodded and asked if they could have pancakes for dinner. The subject hadn't come up again. "Kids are tougher than we give them credit for," Ethan said. "And Riley knows you care about her. That's what matters." The week before the trial, Ruskin's lawyer made one final attempt at intimidation. A process server showed up at the shop with a subpoena for Ethan, demanding he testify about his financial relationship with Lena, specifically whether he'd given her preferential treatment on rent in exchange for favorable testimony. Ethan called the prosecutor immediately. "It's a fishing expedition," the prosecutor explained. "They have nothing, so they're trying to create reasonable doubt by suggesting impropriety. Just tell the truth. You rented her the loft at a fair price, she paid on time, and your relationship developed naturally afterward." That's exactly what happened. "Then you have nothing to worry about. See you in court Monday." That weekend, Ethan's mother offered to take Riley for the entire week of the trial, giving both Ethan and Lena space to focus on testimony without worrying about childcare logistics. Riley was excited about the extended sleepover, already making plans with her grandmother about baking cookies and visiting the park. Sunday night, Lena and Ethan sat on the loft floor eating pizza and trying not to think about what the next week would bring. "I keep running through my testimony," Lena said, picking pepperoni off her slice, "trying to anticipate every question, every angle they might use to discredit me." "You're prepared. You've been over this dozens of times." "I know, but what if I freeze up there? What if I say something wrong and it ruins the entire case?" Ethan took her hand. "Then you correct yourself. The prosecutor said the evidence is solid even without your testimony. You're just reinforcing what they already have. The pressure you're feeling isn't all on you. It feels like it is. I know, but you're not doing this alone." He squeezed her hand. "I'll be there every day, front row. And when it's over, we're going to celebrate. You, me, and Riley. Whatever you want. I just want it to be over. It will be, soon." Monday morning arrived with gray skies and the threat of rain. Ethan wore his only suit, the one he'd bought for his father's funeral and wore maybe twice since. Lena dressed in a navy blue suit, her hair pulled back severely, looking every inch the professional she was. They drove to the courthouse in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. The parking lot was already crowded, news vans setting up across the street. The case had attracted local media attention after a reporter uncovered the scope of Ruskin's fraud scheme. Inside, the prosecutor met them in the hallway. Betrayals. Hart, you're scheduled to testify this afternoon after we establish the pattern of fraud with documentation and expert witnesses. Mr. Cole, you'll likely be called tomorrow. She looked between them. Remember, calm, factual, and honest. Don't let the defense rattle you. The courtroom was smaller than Ethan had expected, almost intimate. He took a seat in the gallery while Lena was led to a waiting area for witnesses. Ruskin sat at the defense table looking diminished somehow, his expensive suit unable to hide the desperation in his eyes. The morning proceeded with methodical precision. The prosecutor presented lease agreements, bank statements, tenant complaints, a paper trail of systematic theft spanning years. Expert witnesses testified about housing law, proper landlord procedures, the clear violations present in Ruskin's practices. Ruskin's lawyer objected frequently, trying to slow the momentum, but the evidence was overwhelming. After lunch, Lena was called to the stand. Ethan watched her walk to the witness box, saw her hand tremble slightly as she was sworn in. But when she sat down and the prosecutor asked her first question, her voice was steady. Ms. Hart, can you describe your initial rental agreement with the defendant? I signed a 1-year lease for a studio apartment at 428 North Elm Street. The monthly rent was $1,200 with a security deposit of the same amount. And did you fulfill the terms of that lease? Yes. I paid rent on time every month, maintained the property, and followed all rules outlined in the agreement. What happened when you attempted to start a small side business? Lena described the escalating demands, the accusations of lease violations, the illegal fees. Her testimony was clear and detailed, corroborated by the documents already in evidence. Then Ruskin's lawyer stood for cross-examination. Ms. Hart, isn't it true that you were running a full commercial operation out of a residential property? No, I was working on architectural drawings for 3 private clients. I used my laptop and drafting table, the same equipment a student might use for homework. But you were generating income. I was doing freelance work, which is legal and common. The lease didn't prohibit working from home. You claim my client changed your locks without notice. Do you have proof? I have text messages showing I had access in the morning and was locked out by evening with no advance notice or opportunity to retrieve my belongings. The lawyer tried different angles, suggesting Lena had damaged the property, implying she'd fabricated evidence, insinuating her relationship with Ethan had influenced her testimony. But Lena stayed calm, answering each question with facts and documentation. After 40 minutes, the lawyer sat down, clearly frustrated. Redirect, Your Honor, the prosecutor said, standing. Ms. Hart, in your own words, why did you file this complaint? Lena looked directly at the jury. Because what Mr. Ruskin did to me was illegal, and I knew I wasn't the only one. I filed the complaint because someone had to stand up and say this isn't acceptable, that tenants have rights, and landlords can't exploit people just because they have power and property. Thank you. No further questions. Ethan testified the next day, describing the day they'd moved Lena's belongings, Ruskin's attempts to charge illegal fees, the threatening behavior. The defense tried to suggest he was biased because of his relationship with Lena, but Ethan calmly pointed out that his relationship had developed after the incidents in question. So you're saying you had no personal interest in helping Ms. Hart when you accompanied her to retrieve her belongings? The defense lawyer asked. I had a human interest in helping someone being exploited, same as I'd help anyone in that situation. How convenient. No, Ethan said evenly. How decent. The prosecutor smiled. The jury looked convinced. Over the next 3 days, the prosecution called other victims, a young teacher, a retired nurse, a college student working 2 jobs. Each told similar stories of illegal fees, withheld deposits, intimidation tactics. The pattern was undeniable. Ruskin's defense crumbled. His lawyer tried to paint him as a struggling property owner dealing with difficult tenants. But the evidence told a different story. Luxury vacations funded by stolen deposits, multiple properties purchased with fraudulent income, a lifestyle built on systematic exploitation. On Friday afternoon, the case went to the jury. They deliberated for 3 hours. Ethan and Lena waited in the courthouse cafeteria, drinking bad coffee and trying to stay calm. Detective Chen joined them, confident but cautious. "The evidence is strong," he said, "but juries are unpredictable. We've done everything we can." When the bailiff finally called them back, Ethan took Lena's hand. They walked into the courtroom together, finding their seats as the jury filed in. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" the judge asked. "We have, Your Honor." "On the count of felony fraud, how do you find?" "Guilty." Lena's breath caught. Ethan squeezed her hand. "On the count of theft by deception?" "Guilty." "On the count of intimidation of a witness?" "Guilty." Count after count, the same word. Guilty. 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 When it was over, Ruskin sat motionless at the defense table, his face blank with shock. The judge set a sentencing date for 3 weeks later and dismissed the jury. Outside the courtroom, Lena collapsed against Ethan, tears streaming down her face. "It's over," she said. "It's really over." "You did it. You stood up to him and you won." Detective Chen approached, shaking both their hands. "Excellent work, both of you. This case is going to have ripple effects. Other victims are already coming forward with complaints against other landlords. You started something important." The prosecutor joined them, equally pleased. "Ms. Hart, the restitution hearing is next month. You should expect to recover your full security deposit plus damages. Mr. Ruskin's assets are being frozen pending sentencing." As they walked to the parking lot, Lena stopped and turned to Ethan. "Thank you," she said, "for believing me when I showed up at your door, for standing beside me through all of this, for being exactly who you are. I didn't do anything special. You did everything that mattered." They drove back to the shop in comfortable silence, the weight of the past months finally lifting. When they pulled into the lot, Ethan's mother's car was already there, Riley visible through the window of the shop office. "I thought we were picking her up tomorrow," Lena said. "Mom must have brought her back early." They walked inside to find Riley sitting at Ethan's desk, drawing with markers. His mother stood nearby, looking pleased with herself. "Riley insisted on making a welcome home sign," she explained. "We've been working on it all afternoon." Riley held up her creation, a poster board covered in colorful drawings of houses, hearts, and the words "Lena wins" in wobbly letters. Lena knelt down, tears starting again. "Did you make this for me? Daddy said you were fighting bad guys in court. Did you win?" "Yes, sweetheart, we won." "I knew you would. You're brave like a superhero." Lena pulled Riley into a hug, and Ethan felt his heart expand in a way he hadn't known was possible. This was his family now, not traditional, not what he'd planned, but real and right and whole. His mother caught his eye and smiled. "I'll leave you three alone. Call me later." After she left, they ordered pizza and had an impromptu celebration dinner in the shop office. Riley chattered about her week with Grandma, showing them the cookies they'd baked and the drawings she'd made. She sat between Ethan and Lena on the small couch, completely comfortable, like this was exactly where she belonged. Later, after Riley had fallen asleep on the couch and Ethan had carried her to his truck to drive her back to his mother's house, Lena and Ethan stood in the loft, finally alone. "I have something to tell you," Lena said. "Okay." "The office space on Maple Street. I signed a new lease today, 6 months instead of a year." Ethan frowned. "Why only 6 months?" "Because I'm keeping the loft. Not as temporary housing, not as a backup plan. I'm keeping it because this is home. You and Riley and this space above your garage. This is where I want to be." "Lena, I know it's small, I know it's not fancy, but it's ours, Ethan. And I don't want to give that up just because society says I should have my own apartment and a proper separation between work and home." She took his hands. "Unless you don't want me here. In which case, I'll respect that and find something else." "I want you here," Ethan said immediately. "I want you here every day, every night, as long as you'll stay." "Then it's settled. The office is for work. The loft is for life." "What about when your lease is up on the office? What if you need more space?" "Then maybe we look at expanding the loft. Or maybe we have a bigger conversation about what our future looks like." She smiled. "But that's a problem for future us. Right now, I just want to be here with you." Ethan pulled her close, kissing her with all the emotion of the past few months, the fear and hope and love that had built between them, one day at a time, one honest conversation at a time. "I love you," he said, the words coming easier than he'd expected. "I love you too. You and Riley both. They stood in the quiet loft, holding each other, and Ethan thought about the night Lena had shown up at his door, desperate, displaced, carrying everything she owned. He'd offered her temporary shelter, never imagining she'd become permanent in the best possible way. The next few weeks settled into a new rhythm. Lena worked out of her office during the day, designing homes for clients who trusted her vision. She came back to the loft in the evenings, where Ethan would be finishing up in the shop and Riley would be doing homework at the kitchen table. Friday dinners became a tradition, sometimes at the loft, sometimes at Ethan's mother's house, always with Riley at the center, soaking up the attention and stability. The sentencing hearing came in mid-November. Ruskin received 4 years in prison plus restitution to all 47 victims. Lena attended with Ethan, watching justice be served, then walked out of the courthouse for the final time. "How does it feel?" Ethan asked. "Like closure. Like I can finally move forward without looking over my shoulder." "Good, because I have something to show you." He drove her to a property on the edge of town, 3 acres of land with a small house that needed work and a large garage that was structurally sound but outdated. "What is this?" Lena asked. "A possibility. The owner's retiring, moving to Florida. He's selling the whole property for less than market value because he wants it to go to someone who will actually use it, not a developer who will tear it down." Lena walked the property, her architect's eye taking in the bones of the structures, the potential of the land. "You're thinking of buying this?" "I'm thinking we could buy this, expand the shop into the garage, renovate the house for us and Riley. Build something together, literally and figuratively." "Ethan, this is huge. This is a massive commitment." "I know. And I'm not saying we have to decide today, but I wanted you to see it, to consider it as an option for our future." He took her hand. "I want to build a life with you, Lena, not just rent you a loft and hope you stay. I want to create something permanent, something that's ours." Lena looked at the house, then at the garage, then at Ethan. "Can we afford this? With both our incomes and the equity I have in the current shop, yeah. It'll be tight for a while, but it's doable." "And Riley, what does she think?" "I haven't told her yet. I wanted to talk to you first, make sure you were on board before I got her hopes up." Lena walked to the front porch of the house, testing the steps. "This needs a lot of work." "It does." "The garage is in better shape than the house." "Definitely." "We'd be taking on debt, risk, years of renovation." "Yep." She turned to face him. "Let's do it." Ethan grinned. "Yeah?" "Yeah. Let's build something together." They made an offer that week. The owner accepted. By December, they owned the property, and Lena was already drawing up renovation plans, balancing her client work with designing their future home. Riley was ecstatic when they told her. "We're going to live together? Like a real family?" "We are a real family," Ethan said. "This just makes it official." "Can I have a puppy room?" Lena laughed. "We'll see about that." Christmas came with snow and chaos. Ethan's mother hosted dinner, and Lena was welcomed into the family traditions like she'd always been there. Riley got a new bike and immediately begged to ride it despite the snow. Ethan and Lena exchanged simple gifts, a tool set for him, drafting pencils for her. But the real gift was the life they were building together. On New Year's Eve, after Riley had fallen asleep at Grandma's house and the world was quiet and covered in snow, Ethan and Lena stood on the porch of their future home, looking at the dark shape of the garage and the scaffolding already up on the house. "A year ago, I had nothing," Lena said. "No home, no security, no plan. And then I knocked on your door." "Best decision you ever made." "Second best. The best decision was staying." Ethan wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "I'm glad you did. I'm glad you trusted me enough to stay when I gave you every reason to leave." "You gave me every reason to stay. You and Riley both." They stood in the cold night air, watching their breath fog in the moonlight, and Ethan thought about how far they'd come. From strangers to landlord and tenant to something so much deeper and more permanent. "What are you thinking about?" Lena asked. "How none of this was planned. How I was just trying to help someone in need, and instead I found everything I didn't know I was looking for." "Me too. And how lucky I am that you showed up that night, desperate and determined, carrying everything you owned." Lena turned in his arms, facing him. "I'm the lucky one. You gave me more than shelter. You gave me hope, a future." a family. We gave each other that. She kissed him as the clock somewhere in town struck midnight, ringing in a new year, a new chapter, a new life built on the foundation of trust and honesty and showing up for each other when it mattered most. 6 months later, on a warm June afternoon, Lena stood in the renovated house, putting the finishing touches on the kitchen while Ethan installed new light fixtures in the hallway. Riley ran through the rooms, claiming her new bedroom for the third time that day. "The puppy room is going to be right here," she announced, pointing to a corner of her room. "We still haven't agreed to a puppy," Ethan called from the hallway. "But we will. Eventually." Lena laughed, catching Ethan's eye. He winked at her, and she knew the puppy was inevitable. Riley usually got what she wanted, especially when she worked both of them against each other. The house was finished, not perfect, but theirs. Every room bore the mark of their combined effort, from the floors Ethan had refinished to the custom built-ins Lena had designed. The garage had been converted into a state-of-the-art auto shop, triple the size of Ethan's old space. Lena's architectural firm was thriving, her office on Maple Street busy with clients and projects. She'd hired an assistant, was considering bringing on a junior architect. The business that had started as a desperate side hustle was now a legitimate success. But the real success was standing in the kitchen of their home, watching Riley play, feeling Ethan's arm around her waist, knowing that she belonged here in a way she'd never belonged anywhere before. That evening, they had a housewarming party. Ethan's mother brought her famous potato salad. Detective Chen stopped by with a bottle of champagne. A few of Ethan's regular customers showed up, along with Lena's clients and colleagues. Patricia Brennan pulled Lena aside. "I'm proud of you. This whole thing, the firm, the house, the family you've built, you did it all on your own terms." "Not entirely on my own," Lena said, looking at where Ethan stood with Riley on his shoulders, showing her the new ceiling fan. "No, you found a good partner. That's smart." "He found me. I just had the sense to stay." As the sun set and the party wound down, Riley fell asleep on the couch, exhausted from excitement. Ethan carried her to her new bedroom, tucking her into bed in a room that was finally, permanently hers. Lena stood in the doorway, watching them. "What?" Ethan asked, noticing her expression. "Just thinking about how different things could have been. If your mother hadn't given me your address. If you'd said no when I showed up. If I'd taken that settlement money and walked away." Ethan crossed to where she stood, pulling her close. "But you didn't. You stayed, you fought, you built something worth having." "We built something worth having." "Yeah, we did." They stood in the hallway of their home, Riley sleeping peacefully behind them, their future spread out in every direction, full of possibility and promise. Lena Hart had arrived at Ethan Cole's door with nothing but 2 duffel bags and desperation. She was leaving with everything that mattered: a home, a family, a life built on trust and effort, and the kind of love that showed up every day, in small ways and large, in crisis and in calm. Ethan had opened his door to a stranger in need. He'd found a partner, a love, a future he hadn't dared to imagine. And Riley, sweet Riley, who'd asked that first night if Lena would stay forever, finally had the answer she'd been hoping for. Not forever in the abstract sense, not a promise that couldn't be kept, but forever in the ways that mattered, in commitment and choice, in daily presence and long-term planning, in the decision to build something together that was stronger than what either of them could create alone. The architect and the mechanic, the single father and the determined woman who refused to be defeated. Together, they'd built something that would last, something worth fighting for, something called home.